All right. Today's reading is Part 212 of CFR Code Federal Regulation Title 49, Part 212, State Safety Participation Regulations. Subpart A, General Purpose Scope Definition Filing. Subpart B, State Federal Rules Program Principle Investigation Surveillance Authority Agreement Certification Joint Planning of Inspection and Monitoring Other Inspections Program Termination Enforcement Actions. Subpart C, State Inspection Personnel, General Qualifications, State Inspection Personnel, Track Inspector, Apprentice Track Inspector, Single Track and Control Inspector, Train Control Inspector, Apprentice Single Train Control Inspector, Motive Power and Equipment Inspector, Locomotive Inspector, Car Inspector, Apprenticeship of the Motive Power and Equipment Inspector, Operating and Practices Inspector, Operating Practices Compliance Inspector, Apprenticeship Operating Practices Inspector, Hazard Material Inspector, Apprenticeship Hazard Material Inspector, Highway Railway Grade Crossing Inspector, Apprenticeship Highway Railway Grade Crossing Inspector, and applicable qualifications, inapplicable qualification requirements. Subpart A, General. This part establishes the standard procedure, state participation, investigation, surveillance activities under the Federal Railroad safety laws and regulations. Definitions are used in this part. Administration means the Federal Railroad Administration, the deputy of the administrator to delegate of either of them. Associate Administrator means Associate Administrator of Safety, Federal Railroad Administration, Deputy Associate Administrator of Safety, FRA. FRA means Federal Railroad Administration. Federal Railroad Safety Laws means the following enactments together with regulations ordered issued under the authority. Federal Railroad Safety Act 1970 amended in Title 4035, U.S. Standard Code 421, 431 through 441. The Safety Appliance Acts is amended with the Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 1 through 16. The Locomotive Inspection Cars amended in Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 22 through 34. Single Inspection Act as in amended in the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 26. Accident Reports Acts amended in the Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 38 through 42. The Hours of Service Act is amended with the Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 61 through 64B, with the Hazardous Material Transportation Act 49, Appendix for U.S. Standard Code 1801, intent sequence as is in pertainment, names as you shipment and transportation of railroad. E. Manufacturer means a person that manufactures, fabricates, marks, and maintains, reconditions, repairs, tests, is contained, which are represented by marks certified, sold, for use of the bulk transportation hazardous material by railroad. F is your shipper means a person offers hazardous material for the transportation, otherwise causes it to be transported. Plan compliance of inspection means investigated surveillance and the activities described in the annual work required in Statute 212-109 of this part provides basic surveillance of railroad facilities, equipment, and operating of the purpose of determining the federal law of compliance with relevant federal safety requirements. Each state agency desiring to conduct investigation surveillance activities must submit the Associated Administrative Safety Federal Railroad Administration, 1200 New Jersey Avenue, Southeast Washington, D.C. 20590, the document which contains the information prescribed in Statute 212-105 and 212-107. All right. Subpart B, State Federal Rules, 212-101, Program Principle. The purpose of the National Railroad Safety Program is to promote safety in all areas of the railroad operation in order to reduce death, injuries, and damage to property resulting in railroad accidents. The National Railroad Safety Program is carried out in part through the issuance of mandatory federal safety requirements through an inspection efforts designed to monitor the compliance with the requirements of the FRA state inspection, determine the extent with which the railroad and shippers and manufacturers have fulfilled their obligations to respect inspection, maintenance, training, supervision, or FRA participation. States do not conduct inspection on track equipment, signal systems, operating practices, hazardous material handling of the railroad, shippers, manufacturers. The National Railroad Safety Program is carried out through the routine inspection, accident investigations, formal and informal educational efforts, complaint investigation, safety and assessments, and special inquiries, regulatory development, research, similar initiatives. It is the policy of the FRA to maintain direct oversight of the railroad shipper manufacturer condition practices relevant to the safety by conducting inspection investigations to concern participation in state agencies. The principal role of the state's safety participation program is national railroad safety efforts to provide enhanced investigation and surveillance capability through the assumption of participating state agencies' responsibility for the plan of the routine compliance inspection. The Federal Railroad Administration incurred the state contribution to the National Railroad Safety Program consistent with the overall program needs, individual state capabilities, the willingness to state undertake any additional investigation surveillance activities. It is the policy of the Federal Railroad Administration to promote growth and vitality of the state safety participation program through liaisons of the state government coordinated federal state investigative and surveillance activities, trainings, inspection personnel. 212-103 Investigation and Surveillance. Subject to the requirements of this part, state agency jurisdiction under the state of the law participate in investigation surveillance of the activities concerning the Federal Railroad Safety Laws, regulation, entering the agreement of the statute 212-105 for the exercise of specified authority. Subject requirements for this part of the state agency jurisdiction under state law may participate in investigate surveillance activities with respect to particular rules, regulation, orders, standards issued under regulatory authority of the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970 by the filing of the annual certification under statute 212-107. Agreements. 212-105 Agreement Scope. The principal method of which states may participate in investigate surveillance activities agreement with the FRA. An agreement may delegate investigated surveillance authority with respect to all any part of the Federal Railroad Safety Laws. Duration. An agreement may be fixed term with the indefinite duration. Amendments. An agreement may be amended to expand or contract its scope and content with consent with the FRA and the state. D. Common terms. Each agreement entered into under this section provides that 1. The state agency delegated certain specified authority with respect to investigation surveillance activities. 2. The delegation is effective only through the extent it is carried out through the personnel required of the state FRA pursuant to subpart C of this part to be qualified with to perform particular investigation surveillance activities to which the personnel are assigned, and 3. The state agencies agrees to provide capability necessary to ensure the coverage of facilities, equipment, operating practice through the planned routine compliance inspection for all the specified part or territory of the state. E. Request for agreement. A request for the agreement shall contain the following information: an opinion counsel of the state agency stating 1. That the agent's jurisdiction over the safety procedure and practice of the facilities, equipment, rolling stock, operation of the railroads in the state, whether the agency has jurisdiction over the shippers and manufacturers. 2. The agency has the authority capability to conduct investigation surveillance activities in conjunction with the rules, regulation, orders, standards issued by the administrator under the Federal Railroad Safety Laws. 3. The state funds may be used in a purpose for this purpose. 2. A statement of the statement agency has furnished a copy of the federal safety statute, rules, regulation, order, and standard pertaining to the state participation. 3. Names of the railroad operating state together with the number of the miles on the main branch of the lines operated with each of the railroad state. 4. The name, the title, and telephone number of the person designated with the agency coordinated with the program, and description of 5. The description of the organization, program, function of the agency will respect the railroad safety. Have a development agreement. Consistent with the national program requirements, but the associated administrator may enter into an agreement under the section prior to the qualification inspection personnel with the state under subpart C of this part. In such a case, this agreement shall specify the date of which the state was assuming investigating surveillance duties. 2. Refer to the undertaking the FRA to provide the training for the state inspector personnel, including the scheduled training course that will be made available. Action upon request. The Associated Administrator responds to request agreements, entering into an agreement based on the request, declining the request by suggesting modifications. 212-107 Certification Scope. In the event of the FRA or the state agencies do not agree upon terms of the participation of the state under the statute 212-105, that this part state wishes to engage, investigate surveillance activities respects to any of the rule, regulation, order, standard issued authority of the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970, the state shall file the annual certification respect to such activities. B. The content. The annual certification shall be filled not less than 60 days before the beginning of the federal fiscal year in which it applies, shall contain the information required in statute 212-105E of this part. In addition, we shall certify that 1. The state agency has authority capability to conduct investigation surveillance activities with the requirements for this part with respect to each rule, regulation, order, standard for the certain which certification is submitted, and state agency will in a minimum conduct plan to compliance with the inspection meeting of the levels of effort and prescribed in the applicable appendix to this part. See action on certification. The associate administrator um, responds to filing an annual certification within 60 days of the receipt accepted in order or by rejecting cause but stated. Delegation authority acceptable annual certification consists to delegation authority to conducting investigation surveillance activities with the consent with the delegations carried out through the personnel required by the state. The Federal Railroad Administration pursuant to subpart C of this part with the qualified to perform the particular investigation surveillance activities to which the personnel are assigned. Statute 212-109, Joint Planning and Inspection. Prior to the beginning of each of the calendar year, each participation state applying with the grant assistance under the Subpart D of this part shall develop in conjunction with the FRA Regional Director of the region in which the state is located with the annual work plan for the conducting investigation surveillance activities by the state agency. The plan shall include the program inspections designed for the monitoring of the compliance with the railroad shippers and manufacturers operating within the state and a portion thereof with the applicable federal railroad safety laws, regulations, in the event of the participation by the state and by the FRA Regional Director cannot agree on the annual work plan, the Associate Administrator for the safety shall receive the manner. Alright, Statute 212-111, monitoring and other inspection. It is policy of the FRA to monitor state investigation, surveillance, practices at the program level. The policy of the FRA to coordinate with the direct inspection and investigation functions and participating state with a responsible state agency providing prior advice to the states whenever practicable. The FRA may conduct the monitoring state investigations surrounding surveillance practices such as other inspection investigating as may be necessary to aid the enforcement of the federal railroad safety laws. Alright, 212-113, state program termination. A state agency participation, investigation, surveillance activity agreement certification shall provide 30 days notice within the intent of the terminal participation. The administration may on its own initiative terminate the participation of the state agency if and after the 30 days of notice for the opportunity for the oral hearing under the section 553 of the Title 5 U.S. Standard Code. The state agency does not establish that it is complied with complying with 1. The requirements of this part, 2. The relevant directives, enforcement manuals, written interpretation of laws, regulation provided with the FRA guidance for the program, the rule national uniformity laws, regulations, order and standard relating the railroad safety as expressed in Section 205 of the Federal Railroad Safety Law Act of 1970, Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 443. Alright, 212-111, 212-115, enforcement actions. Except as provided with this paragraph B of the section, the FRA exclusively authority to assess the compromise penalties and issue the emergency orders, compliance orders, incidents to or cause may be instituted actions for collection of civil penalty for the injunction, relief of the comments, any of the other enforcement actions under federal railroad safety laws. B1. The Section 207A of the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970 amendment of the Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 436A would authorize the participation state to begin with the action for the assessment collection of the civil penalty federal district court proper revenue. The FRA has not acted on the request of civil penalty assessment originated by the state within 60 days of the receipt assessing the penalty determining the written that no violation occurred. Section 207B of the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970 is amended in Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 436B with authorized participation state to bring in an action, injunction, relief of the federal district court of the proper revenue. The FRA has not acted on the request initiating such any action for 15th days of receipt without referring the matter of the Attorney General litigation by the undertaking of the enforcement action and determining in the writing that no violation has occurred. 3. The purpose of the paragraph is to request legal action deemed to be received with legal sufficiency in investigating report specifying the action request received and designated the FRA offices. See, when the request for civil penalty assessment and other administrative actions should be submitted with the FRA Regional Director for the Railroad Safety for the FRA region in which the state is located. Request for the institution injunction activities must be submitted simultaneously to the FRA Regional Director for the Railroad Safety for FRA region in which the state is located in the Enforcement Division of the Chief of Counsel, FRA, Washington, D.C. 20590. Alright, Subpart C, State Inspection Personnel, 212-201, General Qualification State Inspection Personnel. Subpart prescribes a minimum qualification requirement that the state railroad safety inspector compliance with the inspector apprenticeship of the state agency may be established more stringent and additional requirements for its employees. An inspector, compliance inspector, and apprentice inspector shall be re-recognized by the qualified under this part with the state agency associated with the administrator prior to assuming the responsibility in this position. Each of the inspector compliance and the inspector and apprenticeship inspector shall be bona fide employee of the state agency. Each inspector compliance and the inspector, apprenticeship, and inspector shall be demonstrate the ability to read, comprehend written materials such as training, enforcement manuals, regulation, operating safety rules, and railroad similar materials, the ability to compose narrative reports, investigation findings to clear, complete, and grammatical acceptability, the ability to record data on the standard report form for the highly degree of the accuracy, the ability to communicate orally, and the basic knowledge of the railroad transportation function, organization, railroad shippers, manufacturer companies, standard industrial rules, and personal safety. Each of the inspectors shall demonstrate through knowledge of one, railroad practices, record systems, terminology common to the operating maintenance functions, and two, the scope of the major requirements for all federal railroad safety law regulations. F, the additional meeting of the requirements of section inspectors and apprenticeship inspectors shall meet the applicable requirements of statute 212, 203, and through 212, 229 of this subpart. 212, 203, track inspector. A track inspector is required at a minimum to be able to conduct an independent inspection of the track inspection structure for purpose of determining compliance with the track safety standards in Title 49 CFR Part 213. To make reports of these inspection recommended institution enforcement action appropriate promote compliance. The track inspector is required to required at a minimum to have at least 4 years of recent experience in track construction or maintenance. The bachelor's degree in engineering or related technical specification may be substituted for 2 or 4 of the 4 years of experience and requirement for successful completion of the apprenticeship training program, and a successful completion of the apprenticeship training program may be submitted for 4 years of experience requirement. The track inspector shall demonstrate the following specified qualifications: a comprehensive knowledge of the track nomenclature, track inspection techniques, track maintenance and method of track equipment, the ability to understand the detection of deviations from track maintenance standards and accepted in the industry. 2. The track safety standards of Title 49 CFR Part 213. Knowledge of the operating practice of the vehicle track interaction, sufficient understanding of the size, safety, sufficient significance, deviation, combination, deviation. Special knowledge of the requirement of the track safety standards are included. Remedial action required for the bringing defective track into compliance with the standards. Statute 212. 205, Apprenticeship Track Inspector. The Apprenticeship Track Inspector must be enrolled in program training prescribed by the Associated Administrator, leading to the qualification of Track Inspector. The Apprenticeship Track Inspector may participate in investigating surveillance activities, except as an assistant to the qualified state or FRA inspector while accompanying the qualified inspector. An Apprenticeship Track Inspector shall demonstrate the basic knowledge of the track inspection techniques, track maintenance methods, track equipment prior to being enrolled with the program. 212-207, Signal Train Control Inspector. The Signal Train Control Inspector required for the minimum to be able to conduct independent inspection of all the type of the signal and train control systems for the purpose of determining compliance with the rules, standards, and instructions of the railroad signal systems, Title 49 CFR Part 236. To make reports of these inspections recommended by the institution enforcement action of the appropriate promote compliance, the signal train inspector is required at a minimum to have at least 4 years of recent experience in signal construction or maintenance, a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering related technical specialization may be substituted for the 2 or 4 years with the experience requirement. Successful completion of the apprenticeship training program may be substituted for 4 years of this requirement. The signal train control inspector shall demonstrate the following specific qualification: comprehensive knowledge of the signal train control system, maintenance practices, techniques, and inspection techniques. 2. The ability to understand and detect deviations from signal train and control maintenance standards accepted by the industrial, and 2. The rules and standards and construction of the railroad signal systems, Title 49 CFR Part 236. The ability to explain plans, records, to make inspection of the signal train control system, determine the adequacy of stopping distance from prescribed speed. 4. The knowledge of the operating practice of the signal system sufficient to understand the safety significance of the deviations, combination of deviations, and 5. Special knowledge of requirements, rules, standards, and instruction in railroad signal systems, including remedial action required to bring systems and train control systems into compliance with standards. Statute 212-209, train control inspector. The train control inspector is required for the minimum to be able to conduct independent inspections, automatically cap, signal, automatic train stop, automatic train control devices, board, locomotive for the purpose of determining compliance with the subpart E with its rule, standard, and instruction railroad signal system. Title 49 CFR Part 236 to recommend the institution of enforcement action appropriate to promote the compliance. The train control inspector is required a minimum to at least 4 years of recent experience with locomotive construction and maintenance. A bachelor's degree in electrical engineering related to the technical specialty may be substituted with 2 or 4 years for the experience requirement. A successful completion of apprenticeship training program may be substituted for 4 years experience requirement. See, the train control inspector shall demonstrate the following specific qualifications: comprehensive knowledge of the various train control systems on the board of locomotive air brake systems and testing inspection procedures, the ability to understand the detective division, deviations from train control maintenance standards accepted in the industry, and 2, the subpart E of the rule standard for the instruction of the railroad signal system, Title 49, Part 236. 3. Knowledge and operating practice of train control systems sufficient to understand the safety of sufficient deviation, combination, deviation, specialized knowledge of these requirements of subpart E, the rule, standard, instruction, railroad signal system, including remedial action required to bring train control systems on board locomotives into compliance with the standards. 212-211, apprenticeship signal control inspector. The apprenticeship signal with the train control inspector enrolled with the program trained prescribed with the associated administrative leading to the qualification signal training control inspector. The apprenticeship inspector may participate in investigating his surveillance activities except as consistent with the qualified state. The FRA inspector will, while accompanying the qualified inspector prior to being enrolled with the program, the apprenticeship inspector shall demonstrate 1. The working knowledge of the basic electricity ability of the electrical testing equipment with the direct current with the alternating current circuits, and basic knowledge of single train control inspection maintenance method and procedures. Statute 212-213, Motive Power and Equipment Inspector. The Motive Power and Equipment Inspector is required of a minimum to be able to conduct the independent inspection of the railroad equipment for the purpose of determining the compliance with all sections of the Freight Car Safety Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 215, Safety Glazing Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 223, Locomotive Safety Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 229, Safety Appliance Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 231, and Power Brake Standards of Title 49 CFR Part 232. To make reports of these inspection recommended with the inspection and the enforcement action when appropriate to promote compliance, and the motive power and equipment inspector is required at a minimum to have at least 4 years of recent experience with the construction, maintenance, and railroading equipment. The bachelor's degree in engineering related technical specialization may substitute for 2 to 4 years experience and requirement. Successful completion apprenticeship training program may be substituted for a 4-year experience requirement. The motor power and equipment inspector shall be demonstrated the following qualifications: comprehensive knowledge for the construction, testing, inspection, railroad, freight cars, passenger cars, locomotives, and air brakes. The ability to understand detective deviations from 1. Railroad equipment maintenance standard accepted in the industry, 2. The freight car safety standards, safety glazing standards, locomotive safety standards, safety appliance standards, motor power braking standards. The knowledge of the railroad operating procedure associated with the operating of freight cars, passenger cars, locomotives, air brake safety sufficiently to understand significant safety significant with the deviation, combination of the deviation, special knowledge of the proper remedial action to be taken in order to bring defective freight cars and passenger car locomotive air brakes to compliance with the applicable federal standards. Statute 212-215, Locomotive Inspector. A locomotive inspector is required at a minimum to be able to conduct an independent inspection for the locomotive of the air brake system for the purpose of determining compliance with the applicable section of Safety Glazings, Title 49 CFR Part 223, Locomotive Safety Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 229, Safety Appliance Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 231, Power Braking Standards, Title 49 CFR Part 232, to make reports of these inspections recommended by the Institute and enforcement action appropriate to promote the compliance. B. The locomotive inspector is required for the minimum to have at least 4 years experience with locomotive construction, maintenance, a bachelor's degree in the mechanical engineering and related technical specialization may be substituted for the 2 or 4 years of the experience requirement. Successful completion of the apprenticeship training program may be substituted for a 4-year experience requirement. The locomotive inspector shall demonstrate the following specific qualifications: 1. The comprehensive knowledge of the construction, testing, inspection, repair of locomotive and air brakes, the ability to understand and detect deviations. 2. The 1. Railroad equipment and maintenance and standard accepted in the industry. 2. Safety glazing standard, locomotive safety standards, safety appliance standards, power braking standards. 3. The knowledge of the railroad operating procedure associated with the operating locomotive, the air brake sufficient to understand safety significant deviation combination and deviations. 4. Specified knowledge of the proper remedial action to be taken in order to bring defective locomotives and air brakes into compliance with the applicable federal standards. Alright, 212.1.217 Car Inspector. The car inspector is required to run with the able to conduct the independent inspection of the railroad rolling stack of the purpose of determining compliance with all the sections of freight car safety standards. Title 49 CFR Part 215 with the safety glazing. Title 49 Part 223 the safety appliance standard. Title 49 Part 231 power braking standard. Title 49 CFR Part 232 to make the reports of these inspections recommended with the institution enforcement action for the appropriate to promote the compliance. The car inspector is required at a minimum to have at least 2 years for the recent experience in the freight car passenger or construction and maintenance inspection. Successful completion of the apprenticeship training program may be substituted for the 2 years experience requirement. 1. The car inspector shall demonstrate the following specified qualifications: comprehensive knowledge of the construction, testing, and the freight with the passenger car, air brakes, the ability to understand and detect deviations from 1. Railroad freight and passenger car maintenance standards accepted in the industry. 2. The freight car safety standards of the Title 49 CFR Part 215, safety glazing standards, Title 49 CFR Part 223, safety appliances, Title 49 CFR Part 231, and power braking standards, Title 49 CFR Part 232. The knowledge of the railroad operating procedures associated with the operating the freight passenger car and the air brake sufficient to understand safety sufficient deviation combination of deviations. 4. Specialized knowledge and proper remedial action to be taken in order to bring the defective freight and passenger car equipment and air brakes to compliance with the applicable federal standards. Statute 212.219 Apprenticeship Motor Power Inspector. The apprenticeship of the motor power and equipment inspector must be enrolled with the program. The training is prescribed in the associate administrator leading to the qualification as motor power and inspector. The apprenticeship may not participate in investigation surveillance activities except as assistant with a qualified state and the FRA inspector while accompanying the qualified inspector. B. An apprenticeship of the motor power inspector shall demonstrate the basic knowledge of the railroad equipment, air brakes, inspection, testing, maintenance, and prior to being enrolled in the program. Statute 212.221 Operating Practice Inspector. The Operating Practice Inspector is required at a minimum to be able to conduct independent inspection for the purpose of determining compliance with all the sections of the Federal Operating Practice Rules, Regulation Title 49 CFR Part 217, 218, 229, 219, 220, 221, 225, 228, and Hours of Service Act, Title 45, U.S. Standard Code 61364B, to make reports of those inspections recommended with the institution enforcement action for the appropriate to promote compliance. B. The operating practice inspector required for the minimum to have at least 4 years of the recent experience developing and administrative of the railroad operating rules. Successful completion of the apprenticeship training program may be substituted with the 4-year experience requirement. The operating practice inspector shall demonstrate the following specifying qualifications: 1. Comprehensive knowledge of the railroad operating practice, the railroad operating rules and duties of the railroad employees, the general railroad nomenclature, the ability to understand and detect deviations from railroad operating rules accepted in the industry. 2. The federal operating practice regulation, knowledge of operating practice rules, sufficient understanding of safety, significant deviations, specialized knowledge and requirements, federal operating practices, regulations listed in paragraph A of the section, including the remedial action required for the bringing of the railroad operation into compliance with the regulations. Statute 212.223 Operating Practice Compliance Inspector. The Operating Practice and Compliance Inspector is required at the minimum to be able to conduct independent inspection for the purpose of determining compliance with the requirements of the following: 1. Operating Rules, Blue Flag, Title 49 CFR Part 218, Control and Alcohol Drug Use, Title 49 CFR Part 219, Rear End Market Devices Regulation, Title 49 Part 221, Railroad Accident Investigate Reports Classification Investigation, Title 49 CFR Part 225, Hours and Service Act, Title 45, U.S. Standard Code 61364B, implementing regulation, Title 49, CFR Part 228, but to make the reports for those inspection recommended with the institution enforcement action when the appropriate to promote compliance. The operating rule practices compliance inspection is required at a minimum to have at least 2 years of the recent experience of developing an administrative railroad operating rules. Successful completion of apprenticeship training program may be substituted with a 2-year experience requirement. C. The compliance inspector shall demonstrate the following specified qualification: basic knowledge of railroad operations duty for the railroad employees, general railroad safety and safety relates to protection of railroad employees. 2. The basic knowledge of the railroad rules and practices. The ability to understand and detect deviation from the requirements excited in paragraph 8 in the section. And 4. Specialized knowledge of the requirement of federal operating practice regulation listed in paragraph 8 of the section, including the remedial action required to bring the effective conditions into compliance with the applicable federal standards. Or Statute 212, 225, Apprenticeship Operating Practice Inspector. An apprenticeship operating practice inspector must be enrolled with the program training and prescribed with the associated administrator leading the qualification as inspector. The apprenticeship inspector may not participate, investigate, surveillance activities except in assistance of the qualified state and federal railroad inspector while accompanying the qualified inspector. An apprenticeship operating practice inspector should demonstrate the basic knowledge of railroad operating practices related to operating rules, general duties for the railroad employees prior to being enrolled in the program. Alright, 212, 227, Hazardous Material Inspector. The Hazardous Material Inspector is required for the minimum to be able to conduct the independent inspection to determine the compliance with all the pertinent sections of the Federal Hazardous Material Regulation, Title 49, CFR Part 71 through 174 and 179, to make the reports of these inspection findings the recommended by the institution enforcement action within appropriate to promote the compliance. The hazardous material inspection is required at the minimum to have at least 2 years of recent experience in developing administrative with the performing manual functions related with the compliance with the hazardous material regulation, 4 years in recent experience performing the function related with the compliance with the hazardous material regulation, bachelor degree related technical specialization, successful completion of the apprenticeship training program be substitute for these requirements. See, the hazardous material inspector shall demonstrate the following specific qualifications: 1. A comprehensive knowledge of the transportation operating procedure employed by the railroad, shipping, and the manufacturing industry and associated with the transportation of hazardous material. 2. Knowledge and ability to understand and detect deviations from the Department of Transportation Hazardous Material Regulation, including the federal requirements within the industry standards of manufacturing, bulk packaging, and the transportation of hazardous material and railroad. 3. Knowledge and physical and chemical properties of the chemical hazards associated with the hazardous material of the transported railroad, and knowledge of the prior to remedial action required for the bringing of the railroad shipment and manufacturing facilities in compliance with the federal railroad regulation. Knowledge and proper remedial action required for the hazardous material transportation accident and incident occurs. Alright, 212, 229, Apprenticeship Hazardous Material Inspector. The Apprenticeship Hazardous Material Inspector must be enrolled with the program training prescribed by the Associated Administrator for Safety, leading the qualification hazardous material inspection. The apprenticeship may participate, investigate, in surveillance activities except as the assistant to a qualified state or FRA inspector while accompanying the qualified inspector. An apprenticeship hazardous material inspector demonstrates the basic knowledge of the chemical hazard associated with the hazardous material that is transported with the railroad, including requirements for such as shipping papers, marking, labeling, placking, card, and manufacturer maintenance for the packaging associated with the shipment. Alright, 212, 231, Highway Grade Crossing Inspector. The Highway Rail Grade Crossing Inspector is required at a minimum to be able to conduct an independent inspection of all type of the highway rail grade crossing warning system for the purpose of determining compliance with the grade crossing signal system safety rules, Title 49 CFR Part 231, to make the reports for the inspection, to recommend institution enforcement action that is appropriate to promote the compliance. The Highway Rail Grade Crossing Inspector is required at a minimum have at least 4 years of recent experience in the highway, rail, grade crossing, construction maintenance, and a bachelor's degree in engineering. A related technical specialization may be substituted for the 2 or 4 years of experience equipment requirements. Successful full completion of the apprenticeship training programs under Statute 212, 231.3 may be substituted for the 4 years experience requirements. C. The highway rail grade crossing inspector shall demonstrate the following specific qualifications: comprehensive knowledge for the highway grade crossing nomenclature, inspection techniques, maintenance requirements and methods, the ability to understand and detect deviations from grade crossing signal system maintenance, inspection, testing intercepted in the industry, and to the grade crossing signal system safety rules, Title 49 CFR Part 234. 3. Knowledge and operating practice of the highway rail grade crossing system sufficient to understand safety significant deviations from the combination of deviations from 212, 231, C2, 1, and 2, and special knowledge of the requirements for the grade crossing signal system safety rules, Title 49 CFR Part 234, including remedial action required to bring the high rail grade crossing signal system in compliance with the rules, specialized in knowledge and high rail grade crossing standard for the controlling with the manual uniform tracking and control devices. 6. Knowledge and railroad signal systems sufficient to ensure the highway grade crossing warning system and inspection of those systems do not adversely affect the safety of the railroad signal systems. D. A state signal train control inspector qualified with this part will demonstrate the ability to understand and detect deviation from the grade crossing signal system safety rules of Title 49 CFR Part 234 is the team to meet all the requirements section qualified to conduct an independent inspection of all type of the highway grade crossing warning system purpose to demonstrate environmental compliance with the grade crossing signal safety system rules Title 49 CFR Part 234. To make the reports for these inspection recommended institution enforcement action appropriate to promote compliance. Statute 212 to 233, Apprenticeship Highway Rail Grade Crossing Inspector. Apprenticeship Highway Rail Grade Crossing Inspector shall be enrolled in a program training prescribed by the Associated Administrative Safety leading to the qualification of Highway Rail Grade Crossing Inspector. The Apprenticeship Inspector may not participate, investigate, surveillance, and activities except with the assistance of qualified state FRA inspector while accompanying the qualified inspector. B. The prior to being enrolled with the program, the apprenticeship inspector shall demonstrate 1. The working base knowledge of the electricity, the ability to electrical test equipment and direct current of the alternating current circuits, the basic knowledge of the highway rail grade crossing inspection maintenance methods and procedures. And Statute 212-235, applicable qualification requirements. The associate administrator may determine the specific requirement of the subpart is applicable to identify the position certified with the state agency, and if it is not relevant to the actual duties of the position, the determination is made in writing. And that is Part 212. 212 state federal rules.